She pulled a terrified child from the mud while armed men in expensive suits just stood there watching. She didn't know the little girl was a mafia boss's daughter, or that saving her would make the most dangerous man in Chicago refuse to let her go. Clara's feet were screaming. She'd worked a double shift at Rosie's Diner, serving greasy burgers to ungrateful customers for 8 hours straight. Her sneakers had given up somewhere around hour 6, the sole flapping loose, like a broken promise. So she'd kicked them off 2 blocks ago and carried them, walking barefoot through Chicago's South Side like some kind of modern-day beggar. The rain had stopped an hour ago, but the streets were still slick. Construction barriers lined Roosevelt Road, where they were tearing up the old warehouses. Clara took the detour through the mud-caked access road, too tired to care about the filth squishing between her toes. That's when she heard the screaming. Not words, just sounds, high-pitched, terrified sounds that made Clara's exhausted body suddenly forget how to feel pain. She dropped her shoes and ran toward the noise. The scene that greeted her was chaos. 3 black SUVs sat at odd angles on the temporary road, their headlights cutting through the evening gloom. Men in dark suits were shouting at each other, their voices sharp with panic. And there, 15 feet down an unstable slope of wet construction mud, was a wheelchair, tilting dangerously to one side. A girl sat in it, maybe 12 years old, with dark hair plastered to her face, her hands gripping the armrests so hard her knuckles had gone white. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was frozen, her mouth open in silent terror as the wheelchair slowly, inevitably, began to tip. "Get down there," one of the suited men barked. "It's too unstable, boss, the whole slope could give." "I don't care. Move." But nobody moved. They all stood there like statues, these big men in their expensive suits, watching a child sink into the mud. Clara didn't think. She just acted. She launched herself down the slope, her bare feet finding purchase, where the suited men saw only danger. The mud was cold and thick, sucking at her legs with each step. Sharp debris hidden beneath the surface, broken glass, twisted metal, bit into her soles. She ignored it. The wheelchair was tilting further now, 45 degrees and counting. The girl's eyes found Clara's, wide and brown and terrified. "I've got you," Clara gasped, even though she didn't know if she did. She grabbed the wheelchair with both hands and pulled. Nothing happened. The mud held it like a fist. Clara repositioned, braced her legs, and pulled again. Pain shot through her palms. Something sharp had opened her skin, but the chair moved an inch. Then 2 inches. The girl was making small, desperate sounds now. Clara looked into those terrified eyes and felt something fierce and protective surge through her exhausted body. "You're okay," she said firmly. "I promise. You're okay." With a sound like a giant suction cup releasing, the wheelchair came free. Clara nearly fell backward, but caught herself. The slope was giving way beneath her feet. She could feel it starting to slide. She had maybe 10 seconds before the whole thing collapsed. She unlatched the wheelchair's safety belt with shaking, bloody hands and lifted the girl. She was small, lighter than Clara expected, but dead weight in her terror. Clara held her tight and began climbing. Her feet screamed. Her hands screamed. Her lungs screamed. She climbed anyway. Hands reached down, finally, and took the girl from her arms. Clara collapsed at the top of the slope, gasping, as the wheelchair and a section of mud disappeared down the hill with a wet, rushing sound. 5 seconds later. If she'd been 5 seconds slower. "She's a child, not a symbol." Clara's own voice surprised her. She'd grabbed the nearest suited man by his lapel without even realizing it. He'd said something, made some excuse about the terrain, about protocol, and she'd just snapped. The slap came before she could stop it. Her muddy, bleeding palm connected with his face in front of everyone. The world went very, very quiet. That's when Clara looked up and really saw them. A dozen men in suits, all staring at her with identical expressions of shock. And standing among them, holding his daughter, was a man who made the air feel different just by existing. He was maybe 40, with iron gray at his temples and eyes like winter. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Clara's entire year's rent. But what made her breath catch wasn't his expensive clothes or his obvious wealth. It was the way he looked at her. Like he was seeing something he'd never seen before. Like he was recalculating everything he thought he knew about the world. The girl in his arms reached out toward Clara, making soft sounds, her fingers grasping at air. "Sir," one of the men said urgently. "We need to move."
Now.
The man's eyes stayed on Clara for another heartbeat. Then he nodded sharply. "Pack up. We're leaving." They moved like a military unit, efficient and fast. Within seconds, the SUVs were loading up. Clara caught glimpses of the girl being secured in the middle vehicle, still reaching back toward her. The man, the one who'd held the girl, paused at his car door. He looked at Clara one more time, and she saw something flicker across his face. Recognition? Calculation? Concern. "You should go," he said quietly. His voice was rough silk, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. "And forget you saw this." Then he was gone, the SUVs disappearing into the Chicago night like they'd never been there at all. Clara stood alone in the mud, bleeding and barefoot, with no idea that she'd just saved the daughter of Lorenzo Vitali, the most powerful crime boss in Chicago. And no idea that in a building 3 blocks away, someone had photographed the entire thing. Clara's hands were shaking. She stood in the empty construction zone, watching the taillights of the SUVs disappear around the corner. The adrenaline that had carried her down that slope and back up again was draining away, leaving nothing but pain and a creeping sense of unreality. Had that really just happened? She looked down at her hands. Blood mixed with mud, forming dark streaks across her palms. The cuts weren't deep, but they stung like fire. Her feet were worse. She could feel warm blood between her toes, could see the gashes from whatever metal she'd stepped on in that godforsaken mud pit. And she'd slapped him, that man in the suit, right across the face, in front of everyone. "Oh God," Clara whispered. "What did I just do?" Her legs started to give out. She caught herself against a construction barrier, breathing hard. The man who'd held the girl, the one with the winter eyes, his last words echoed in her head. "You should go. And forget you saw this." Clara wanted to laugh. Forget? How was she supposed to forget pulling a terrified child out of the mud while grown men stood around doing nothing? She bent down and found her ruined sneakers where she'd dropped them. The sole was hanging on by a thread.
Perfect.
Just perfect. She shoved her bleeding feet into them anyway and started walking. The South Side at night wasn't safe for a woman alone. Clara knew this. Everyone knew this. But right now, she was too tired and too shocked to care. She limped through the empty streets, past boarded-up shops and graffiti-covered walls, heading toward her apartment 3 miles away. She didn't notice the camera lens in the 4th-floor window of an abandoned warehouse. Didn't see the flash of a telephoto lens capturing her mud-covered form as she stood over the suited men. Didn't hear the rapid clicking as someone photographed the moment she handed the girl to safety, her face twisted in fierce protectiveness. 3 blocks away, in a basement apartment that smelled like cigarettes and old pizza, Marcus Chun reviewed his photos with growing excitement. "Holy shit," he muttered, zooming in on his laptop screen. "Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit." He'd been staking out that location for 3 days, hoping to catch Lorenzo Vitali's convoy on their way back from the countryside estate. The rival families paid good money for intel on Vitali's movements. Marcus wasn't proud of selling information to gangsters, but journalism didn't pay the bills anymore. Not in Chicago. Not anywhere. But these photos? These were worth 10 times his usual fee. A stranger, some random woman, holding Isabella Vitali in the mud. The boss's precious daughter, the one he kept hidden from the world, completely vulnerable. And the Vitali guards just standing there, useless. This made the boss look weak. Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard, uploading the photos to an encrypted server. Within minutes, they'd be in the hands of the Rossetti family, the Koreans, maybe even the Russians. Everyone who wanted a piece of Vitali's territory would see these. He felt a momentary pang of guilt thinking about the woman in the photos. She clearly had no idea what she'd stumbled into. But that wasn't his problem. "Sorry, lady," Marcus said to her frozen image on his screen. "Wrong place, wrong time." He hit send. Clara made it 2 miles before she had to stop and rest. She collapsed on a bus stop bench, her whole body trembling. The adrenaline crash was hitting hard now. She felt dizzy, sick, like the ground was tilting under her. The girl's face kept flashing through her mind. Those terrified brown eyes. The way she'd reached out to Clara even after she was safe, like she didn't want to let go. Clara had never seen someone look at her like that before. Like she mattered. Like she was a hero instead of a struggling waitress with negative $47 in her checking account. "You're losing it," she told herself. They were just some rich people having car trouble. That's all. But she knew it wasn't. The way those men had moved military precision. The way they'd all carried guns under their jackets. She'd seen the bulges when they reached for the girl. The way the gray-eyed man had looked at her, like he was deciding whether she was a threat. Clara pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked, had been for 6 months, but it still worked. 11:47 p.m. Mia would be worried sick. She typed out a text. "Coming home. Got held up. I'm fine." Her little sister responded immediately. "Where are you?" "I was about to call the police." "Don't. I'm fine. Be home in 20. Clara forced herself to stand. Her feet screamed in protest. She had 1 more mile to go. As she limped through the darkness, she passed a group of young men on a corner. They went quiet when they saw her, this bleeding, mud-covered woman stumbling through their territory. One of them started to approach, but another grabbed his arm. "Let her go, man. She's already had a bad night." Clara almost laughed. If they only knew. She finally reached her apartment building, a 5-story brick structure that had been under renovation for the past decade. The lobby door hung crooked on its hinges. The elevator had been broken since 2019. Clara climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, leaving muddy, bloody footprints on each step. At her door, she paused. Her keys were in her pocket, but she couldn't make herself reach for them yet. Through the thin walls, she could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's TV blaring. Could hear the couple in 3B fighting again. Could hear the familiar sounds of home, a place that felt both safe and suffocating at the same time. Clara took a deep breath and opened the door. Mia was on her in seconds. "Oh my God, what happened to you? Is that blood? Clara, is that blood?" "I'm okay," Clara said automatically. Just give me a minute." But as she looked into her sister's worried eyes, Clara had the strangest feeling, like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down, knowing that one wrong step would send her tumbling into an abyss she couldn't see the bottom of. She just didn't know she'd already taken that step. 3 miles away, in a mansion on the North Shore, Lorenzo Vitali stared at his phone as the first photo hit his encrypted message board. His daughter. His Isabella. Held by a stranger. Vulnerable. Exposed. "Find her," he said quietly into the darkness. "Find her now." "Sit. Now." Mia pushed Clara onto their battered couch, the one they'd found on the curb 3 years ago, and disappeared into the bathroom. 16 years old, and already acting like the parent. Clara would have found it funny if she wasn't so tired. The apartment was exactly 420 square feet. Clara knew because the landlord loved to remind them of it every time he raised the rent. 1 main room that served as living room, dining room, and Clara's bedroom. A tiny alcove where Mia slept. A bathroom the size of a closet. A kitchen that was basically a hot plate and a mini fridge. Home sweet home. Mia returned with their first aid kit, a shoebox containing Band-Aids, expired Neosporin, and medical tape they'd stolen from the hospital waiting room. She knelt in front of Clara, and grabbed her foot without ceremony. "This is going to hurt," Mia said. "Everything already hurts." Mia pressed a damp washcloth against Clara's sole. Clara hissed through her teeth. "What happened?" Mia asked quietly, wiping away mud and blood. "And don't say nothing. You look like you wrestled an alligator." "Just wrong place, wrong time. Clara, I helped someone, okay? Some kid who was stuck. It's not a big deal." Mia looked up at her, dark eyes sharp. She had their mother's eyes, the only thing either of them had inherited from the woman who'd overdosed when Mia was 8. Clara had been 21, working 2 jobs, suddenly responsible for a traumatized second grader. That was 5 years ago. Sometimes it felt like 50. "You're lying," Mia said. "You're using your everything is fine voice." "I'm not." "Yes, you are. You use it when the rent's late. You use it when you skip meals, so I can eat. You use it when you pretend you're not scared." Mia's hands were gentle despite her sharp words, carefully picking debris from Clara's cuts. "So what happened?" Clara sighed. How could she explain? Some rich people, probably mobsters, had a car accident. Their disabled daughter almost died because they were too scared to help her. "I jumped in mud and saved her life. No big deal." Except it was a big deal. Those winter gray eyes kept flashing through her mind. "I saw something I shouldn't have seen," Clara said finally. "That's all. But it's over now." Mia didn't look convinced, but she returned to cleaning the wounds. "You need stitches for this one." "Can't afford stitches." "Clara." "Butterfly bandages. We've got some left from when you fell last year." Mia's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She knew the numbers as well as Clara did. They were always one emergency away from disaster. As if on cue, Clara's eyes landed on the kitchen table. Bills. Spread out like a hand of terrible cards. The red final notice stamps practically glowed in the dim light. Electric, $347, due 3 days ago. Rent, $1,200, due in 1 week. Mia's school fees, $89. Medical bills from when Mia had strep throat last month, $423. Clara's paycheck from the diner, $891 for 2 weeks of work. The math didn't work. It never worked. "Stop looking at them," Mia said softly. "We're going to lose the apartment." "No, we're not. I can pick up more hours at the—" "You're not dropping out of school." Clara's voice was sharp. "Final." "That's not happening." "Then what?" "We're bleeding money, Clara. You work 60 hours a week and we're still drowning." "I'll figure it out." "I always figure it out." "By doing what?" "You're already working yourself to death." Clara didn't have an answer to that. Mia finished bandaging her feet in silence. Then she moved to Clara's hands, carefully cleaning the deep cuts across her palms. These were worse, jagged, filled with grit, and who knew what else? Definitely needed stitches. Butterfly bandages it was. "You know what the worst part is?" Clara said, watching Mia work. "Those people tonight, the ones with the stuck kid, they were mobsters. Had to be. Black SUVs, guys with guns, the whole cliché." "How do you know they had guns?" "I saw them." "Under their jackets." Clara shook her head. "And I'm thinking, these people are probably the reason this neighborhood is falling apart. They're probably the reason half the businesses on our street shut down. The reason people are afraid to walk around at night." "Clara." "They ruin everything," Clara continued, her voice rising. "They buy up properties and let them rot. They run drugs through our schools. They make it impossible for normal people to just exist. And tonight I had to—" She stopped herself. "Had to what?" "Nothing. Doesn't matter." But it did matter. It mattered that she'd saved that little girl, that she'd felt genuine fear for a mobster's daughter, that she'd looked into those terrified brown eyes and seen a child instead of a symbol. Clara stood up, testing her bandaged feet. Pain shot up her legs, but she could walk. "I need a shower." "There's no hot water. Building's boiler is broken again." "Of course it is." Clara limped to the bathroom, 3 steps from the couch, and turned on the water. Freezing cold, just like Mia said. She stripped off her muddy clothes and stepped under the spray anyway, gasping as ice-cold water hit her skin. She watched the mud swirl down the drain, brown water turning pink with blood, carrying away the evidence of tonight's disaster. But she couldn't wash away the memory. That little girl's face. The way she'd reached for Clara, even after she was safe. The way the gray-eyed man had looked at her, like he was memorizing her face. You should go. And forget you saw this. Yeah, Clara whispered to the empty bathroom. That's going to happen? She stood under the freezing water until her teeth chattered, trying to make sense of the last 2 hours. Trying to convince herself that tomorrow, everything would go back to normal. In the main room, Mia stared at the bills on the table. Then she looked at her phone, at the text message she'd received an hour ago from a classmate. My uncle says they're hiring at the packaging plant. Night shift. $15 per hour under the table. You interested? Mia knew Clara would kill her if she dropped out. But Clara didn't need to know. Night shift meant she could still go to school during the day. It meant they could actually pay their bills. It meant Clara might stop looking so tired all the time. Mia typed back, I'm interested. When can I start? Outside their building, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver kept the engine running, watching the third-floor windows. He lifted a phone to his ear. Found her. Roosevelt Gardens Apartments, Unit 3C. Name's Clara Martinez, age 26. Works at Rosie's Diner. Has a younger sister. There was a pause. Yes, sir. Maintaining surveillance. What are your orders? The voice on the other end was quiet.
Calm. Deadly.
Watch her. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to, and find out if anyone else knows about tonight. Understood, Mr. Vitali. The line went dead. Inside the car, the driver settled in for a long night. He'd done this before, watched people who'd caught the boss's attention. Usually they disappeared after a few days. But something about this one felt different. The boss's daughter had reached for her. Isabella Vitali, who hadn't voluntarily touched another human being in 3 years, had reached for this stranger like her life depended on it. That changed things. The driver didn't know how yet, but it would. It always did. The photos hit the underground networks at 3:47 a.m. By dawn, every major crime family in Chicago had seen them. In a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Vincent Rossetti poured his morning espresso and studied the images on his tablet. His nephew Tony stood behind him, practically bouncing with excitement. Look at this, Tony said, zooming in on one photo. Vitali's guy's just standing there while some random woman saves his daughter. They look like idiots.
Vincent said nothing.
He swiped through the photos slowly, methodically. The disabled girl in the mud. The stranger pulling her out. The guards frozen in place. And there, in the last photo, Lorenzo Vitali himself, holding his daughter, staring at the mud-covered woman with an expression Vincent had never seen on his rival's face before. Uncertainty. This is it, Tony continued. This is what we've been waiting for. We can use this. Show the other families that Vitali's getting soft. His own men won't even protect his kid without some civilian doing their job. Shut up, Vincent said quietly. Tony, shut up. Vincent set down his espresso. Who took these photos? Some freelancer. Marcus Chen. He sells intel to whoever pays. And who else has seen them? Everyone. The Koreans, the Russians, probably half the South Side by now. They're spreading like wildfire. Vincent leaned back in his chair. 20 years he'd been trying to find a weakness in Lorenzo Vitali's armor. 20 years of watching the man consolidate power, eliminate threats, build an empire on fear and loyalty. And now this. A crack in the foundation. But something felt wrong about it. Find out who the woman is, Vincent said finally. Everything about her. Where she lives, where she works, who she knows. I want a complete profile by noon.
Why?
She's nobody. Just some. If she was nobody, these photos wouldn't bother me, Vincent turned to face his nephew. Vitali's daughter reached for her. Did you see that? After she was safe, she reached back. That child hasn't reached for anyone since her accident 3 years ago. Tony frowned. So either this woman staged the whole thing to get close to the Vitalis, which would make her very dangerous, or she's genuinely that brave and kind, which makes her even more dangerous. I don't understand. You never do. Vincent picked up his tablet again. Kindness is a weapon when you know how to use it. And if Vitaly sees value in this woman, we need to know why. Now go. I want that profile. Tony left, confused but obedient. Vincent stared at the photos for a long time after he was gone. In his business, you learn to read people by their smallest gestures. The way they held their shoulders. The tension in their jaw. Lorenzo Vitali, in that last photo, looked like a man who'd just seen a ghost. Or worse, a man who'd just seen hope. Lorenzo's estate was in chaos. You need to make a statement. His consigliere, Marcus Viti, paced the study like a caged animal. These photos, everyone's seen them. They're saying your men are incompetent. They're saying you're vulnerable. Lorenzo sat behind his mahogany desk, silent. He'd been silent for the past hour while Marcus spiraled. We need damage control. We bring the woman in, make her disappear quietly. Say she was a plant from the Rossettis, trying to infiltrate our organization. We caught her, dealt with her. End of story. No, Lorenzo said. Marcus stopped pacing. What? I said no. Lorenzo, you're not thinking clearly. This woman is a liability. She saw Isabella, she saw our vehicles, she probably memorized faces. And now her picture is all over the underground. The rivals will use her to get to you. I said no. Lorenzo's voice was quiet, but it cut through Marcus's panic like a knife. Find her. Bring her here. But she doesn't get hurt. Are we clear? Marcus stared at him. You can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking? She's a security risk. She saved my daughter's life. While my trained guards stood there like statues, Lorenzo stood up, his winter gray eyes cold. Which one sounds like the bigger security risk to you? Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. He'd known Lorenzo for 20 years, since they were both young men fighting for territory in the South Side. He'd seen Lorenzo order executions without blinking. Had seen him destroy entire operations with a single phone call. But he'd never seen him look like this. Uncertain. Almost.
Guilty.
Where is Isabella? Lorenzo asked. Still asleep. The doctor gave her something for the anxiety. When she wakes up, I want to be there. Marcus nodded slowly. Lorenzo, I have to say this. That woman, whoever she is, she's trouble. I can feel it. She's either working for someone or she's about to become a target for everyone who wants to hurt you. Then we make sure she's protected. Protected? We don't even know her. Lorenzo walked to the window overlooking his estate's grounds. Gardens his late wife had designed. A wheelchair ramp they'd built 3 years ago after the accident that took Isabella's ability to walk and speak. She jumped into that mud without hesitation, Lorenzo said quietly. While men with guns and training stood there debating risk assessments, she just acted. When was the last time you saw someone do something without calculating what they'd get out of it? Marcus didn't have an answer to that. Find her, Lorenzo repeated. And Marcus? The men who froze last night. The ones who let my daughter sit in that mud while they worried about their suits. I want them reassigned. Desk work. Permanently. Lorenzo. They failed her. I don't accept failure when it comes to Isabella. Marcus left, his mind racing. This was bad. Lorenzo was making decisions based on emotion, not strategy. The woman had gotten under his skin somehow, and that made her the most dangerous person in Chicago. Whether she knew it or not. In Isabella's bedroom, the morning light filtered through lace curtains. She was awake. Had been for an hour. But she lay still, staring at the ceiling, her hands moving in the air above her.
Signs.
The language she'd learned after the accident stole her voice. Her nurse, Mrs. Alvarez, watched from the doorway, her expression troubled. Isabella's hands moved in the same pattern, over and over. CLARA.
Clara. Clara.
Clara. Sweetie, Mrs. Alvarez said gently, coming into the room. Your father will be here soon. Are you hungry? Isabella's hands kept moving. She wasn't looking at Mrs. Alvarez. She was looking at something only she could see. The woman with kind eyes who'd pulled her from the mud. The woman whose hands bled but held her tight anyway. The woman who'd whispered, "You're okay," like a promise. Clara. Isabella had asked her name while sitting in her father's car, her hands shaking as she signed the question. One of the guards had told her father, who'd repeated it quietly. Clara. It was the first time in 3 years that Isabella had asked anyone's name. The first time she'd wanted to remember someone. Mrs. Alvarez pulled out her phone and texted Lorenzo. She's awake.
And
You need to see this. 2 minutes later, Lorenzo appeared in the doorway. He watched his daughter's hands move through the same pattern over and over and felt something crack open in his chest.
hope.
And terror. Because in his world, the things you loved were the things that got you killed. Clara woke up to someone pounding on her door. She rolled off the couch, her makeshift bed, and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in her body screamed. Her bandaged hands throbbed. Her feet felt like they'd been run over by a truck. The pounding continued. I'm coming. Clara limped to the door and yanked it open. Mrs. Chun from 3A stood there, her arms crossed, her expression suspicious. Who are they? Who's who? The men in the black car. They've been sitting outside since last night. My grandson saw them. Are you in trouble? Clara's stomach dropped. What black car? Don't play stupid with me, Mrs. Chun leaned in, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. I know what black cars with tinted windows mean. Are you working for someone? Is this about drugs?
What?
No, I don't. Because if you bring that trouble to this building, if you put my family in danger. Mrs. Chun, I swear I have no idea what you're talking about. The old woman studied her face, then huffed. Stay away from my grandson. She turned and shuffled back to her apartment, muttering in Mandarin. Clara stood in her doorway, confused and increasingly worried. She walked to the window, carefully, her feet still screaming, and peered through the grimy glass. There, parked across the street, was a black sedan. Just sitting there. Engine running. Windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. Oh no, Clara whispered. No, no, no. The gray-eyed man's words came back to her. You should go. And forget you saw this. She hadn't forgotten. And apparently, neither had they. At Rosie's diner, things got worse. Clara showed up for her shift at noon, still limping. She'd wrapped her hands in extra bandages and worn her oldest sneakers, the ones with actual soles, but every step hurt. Rosie took one look at her and frowned. What happened to you?
Fell.
It's fine. You look like hell. Thanks, Rosie. You're a real confidence booster. But Rosie wasn't laughing. She pulled Clara aside between the kitchen and the counter. There were men here this morning, asking about you. Clara's blood went cold. What kind of men? The expensive kind. Nice suits, nice watches. They asked what time you work, where you live, if you had any friends who came in regularly. Rosie's eyes were hard. I told them nothing. But Clara, what's going on? Are you mixed up in something? No. I helped someone last night. That's all. Helped who? Just some kid who was stuck. I didn't know it was a big deal. Rosie studied her face for a long moment. This neighborhood, these people, you don't just help someone without it becoming a thing. You should be careful. I am being careful. Are you? Because you look scared. Clara was scared. Terrified, actually. But she couldn't afford to lose this job. I'm fine. Really? Can I work? Rosie sighed. Table 4 needs coffee. And Clara? If those men come back, you tell me immediately. I don't care who they are. Clara spent her shift jumping at every shadow. Every time the door opened, she expected to see suits. Black cars. Winter gray eyes. But they never came. They were just watching. Mia noticed the car immediately when she got home from school. She wasn't stupid. She'd grown up on the South Side. You learn to recognize danger the way other kids learn to recognize birdsongs. The black sedan had been there when she left for school that morning. It was still there now, hours later. Same spot. Same tinted windows. Watching their building. Mia pulled out her phone and texted Clara, "There's a car outside. Black sedan. Been there all day." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. "Finally, I know. Stay inside when you get home. Lock the door." "What's going on?"
I don't know yet.
"Just be careful." Mia looked up at their third-floor window. Clara was standing there, barely visible through the glass, staring down at the street. At the car. Something was very, very wrong. By evening, the whole building knew about the black car. Mr. Rodriguez from 2B confronted Clara in the stairwell. "My wife says there are gangsters watching our building because of you. I don't know anything about. We have children here. If you brought this to our home." "I didn't bring anything. I helped a kid who was stuck in mud. That's it." But Mr. Rodriguez didn't look convinced. He pushed past her, shaking his head. Clara made it back to her apartment and locked the door. Mia was sitting on the couch, her homework spread around her, but she wasn't looking at it. "Everyone's talking about you," Mia said quietly. "I know. They think you're working for the gangs. Mrs. Chin told everyone you're dealing drugs out of our apartment." "I'm not." "I know you're not." Mia's voice cracked. "But they don't. And that car is still out there." "Clara, what did you do?" Clara sank onto the couch beside her sister. How could she explain? She'd saved a child's life. That was supposed to be a good thing. A hero thing. But in this world, apparently, kindness made you suspicious. "I saved someone," Clara said finally. "Someone important, I think. And now they're trying to figure out if I'm a threat." "Are you?" "Of course not."
But they don't know that.
Mia was quiet for a moment. Then, what happens if they decide you are a threat? Clara didn't have an answer to that. Outside, the black sedan's window rolled down an inch. The driver lifted his phone. Subject is home. Sister arrived from school at 3:47 p.m. Neighbors are getting agitated. Building residents suspicious. Should we make contact? He listened to the response, then nodded. Understood. Maintaining surveillance. But sir, the longer we wait, the more attention we draw. Rossetti's people could be watching too. Another pause. Yes, sir. Tomorrow morning. I'll arrange the pickup. The window rolled back up. Inside Unit 3C, Clara stood at the window again, staring down at that black car. She thought about running, taking Mia and disappearing into the city. They'd done it before, after their mother died, when social services wanted to split them up. But where would they go? They had no money, no family, no safety net. And something told her that running from these people would be the worst decision she could make. So she stood there, watching the watchers, feeling the walls close in. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, curiosity, stupidity, made her pick up. Clara Martinez? The voice was male, professional, cold. Who is this? Someone who wants to talk. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., a car will pick you up. You'll come willingly, or we'll have a problem. I'm not going anywhere with. This isn't a negotiation. Someone wants to meet you. You can make this easy, or you can make this difficult. The choice is yours. The line went dead. Clara stood there, phone pressed to her ear, listening to the dial tone. Mia looked up from the couch. Who was that? Clara turned to face her sister, trying to keep her voice steady. We need to talk about what happens if I don't come home tomorrow. Clara, just listen. If something happens to me, you call Rosie. She has an envelope in her safe with money and instructions. You go to Aunt Linda's in Indiana. You finish school. You. Stop it. Mia was on her feet now, tears streaming down her face. "You're talking like you're going to die." "I'm not going to die. I'm just being careful." But as Clara pulled her sister into a hug, she wondered if she was lying. Because tomorrow morning, she was getting into a car with people who could make her disappear. And nobody would even know where to look. Clara didn't sleep. She sat on the couch all night, watching the clock tick toward morning. Mia had finally passed out around 2 a.m., exhausted from crying. Clara had covered her with their one good blanket and stayed awake, planning. She'd written a letter, hidden it in her pillowcase. If she didn't come back, Mia would find it. At 7:45 a.m., Clara kissed her sleeping sister's forehead and walked out the door. The black sedan was waiting. 2 men in suits stood beside it. Not the same ones from the mud. These were bigger, harder. One of them opened the rear door, without a word. Clara's legs felt like concrete. "Where are we going?" "Someone wants to talk to you." "I have a right to know." "You don't have rights," the man's voice was flat, emotionless. "You have choices. Get in the car willingly, or we make you." "What's it going to be?" Clara thought about screaming, running, fighting. But Mrs. Chun was watching from her window. Mr. Rodriguez from the corner. If she made a scene, these men might come back, might hurt someone. She got in the car. The door shut behind her like a coffin lid. "Hands out," one of the men said, sliding in beside her. "What?" He pulled out a black cloth. "Blindfold. Standard procedure. You're kidnapping me. We're protecting operational security. Now hands out, or I do it the hard way." Clara's hands shook as she held them out. The cloth went over her eyes, plunging her into darkness. She felt the car start moving, felt the turns and stops, tried to count them to track their location. After the 5th turn, she gave up. She was lost. The drive took 40 minutes. When the blindfold finally came off, Clara found herself staring at a mansion that looked like it belonged in a movie. Stone walls, iron gates, gardens that probably cost more to maintain than she made in a year. "Out," one of the men said. Clara's legs were numb. She stumbled getting out of the car, and rough hands caught her arms. They marched her up stone steps, through a door that was probably older than her grandmother, into a hall that echoed with their footsteps. The ceiling was 30 feet high. Paintings covered the walls, real ones, probably worth millions. A chandelier hung above them like a crystal waterfall. Clara had never felt more out of place in her life. "Wait here." They left her standing in the center of the hall, alone. But she could feel eyes on her, cameras probably, maybe people hidden in doorways. She wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to wake up from this nightmare. The sound of footsteps made her freeze. 6 men entered the hall. 5 wore suits that cost more than her yearly rent. But it was the 6th one, the one in the center, who made her breath catch. Winter-gray eyes. The man who'd held the girl. The one who'd told her to forget what she'd seen. Lorenzo Vitali. She knew his name now. Had heard it whispered in the diner, seen it in the news. The most powerful crime boss in Chicago. And she'd saved his daughter. "Miss Martinez," Lorenzo said, his voice that same rough silk she remembered. "Thank you for joining us." "I didn't have a choice." "Everyone has choices," he gestured to the men flanking him. "My consigliera, Marcus Vitti. And my security team. They have questions for you." Marcus stepped forward, his eyes cold. "How did you know we'd be on that road?" "I didn't." "Convenient timing, don't you think? You just happened to be walking past exactly when we had an accident. I work at a diner 5 blocks from there. I walk home every night. Through a construction zone. The normal route was flooded from the rain. I took the detour." Clara's fear was turning to anger. "What is this? I helped your daughter, and now I'm being interrogated like a criminal?" "You could be a plant," Marcus said. "Sent by the Rossettis. The timing is too perfect. I don't even know who the Rossettis are. Or you could be looking for payout. Saving the boss's daughter, expecting a reward." "I don't want your money." Clara's voice echoed through the hall. "I saw a kid who was scared, and nobody was helping her. That's it. That's the whole story. Marcus looked at Lorenzo. Sir, she's a security risk. We should. Where do you work? Lorenzo interrupted, his eyes never leaving Clara's face. Rosie's Diner. South Side. How long? 3 years. And, before that, different diner. Different neighborhood. I've been waiting tables since I was 21. Family? Clara hesitated. My sister.
Mia.
She's 16-inch. Parents? Dead. The word came out harder than she intended. Lorenzo nodded slowly. You live in Roosevelt Gardens.
Unit 3C.
Rent is 3 months behind. You have $17 in your checking account. Your sister has a 38 GPA and wants to study medicine. Clara's blood ran cold. How do you? I know everything about you, Miss Martinez. I know you skip meals so your sister can eat. I know you work doubles every weekend. I know you turned down a scholarship to community college because you had to take care of Mia after your mother overdosed. Lorenzo took a step closer. So, I'm going to ask you one more time. Why did you help my daughter? Because she needed help. Clara's voice cracked. Because she was terrified and nobody was doing anything. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know who she was. I just saw a kid in trouble, and The door at the far end of the hall opened. Everyone turned. A nurse pushed a wheelchair into the room. And in that wheelchair sat the girl from the mud. Isabella. She looked different in daylight. Clean, dressed in soft clothes, her dark hair brushed and shining. But her eyes, those same terrified brown eyes, found Clara's immediately. And everything else in the room ceased to exist. Isabella's hands moved, signing something Clara didn't understand. The nurse bent down listening, then looked shocked. Mr. Vitale, she says. But Isabella was already moving. Not with her legs. She couldn't. But with her hands, frantically spinning the wheelchair's wheels, propelling herself forward. Toward Clara. The security team tensed. Marcus moved to intercept. Don't, Lorenzo said quietly. Isabella rolled right up to Clara and stopped. Her hands were shaking as she reached up. Clara didn't think. She just knelt down and took those small hands in her bandaged ones. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Her hands squeezed Clara's with surprising strength. The hall was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. She hasn't touched anyone voluntarily in 3 years, the nurse whispered. Not since the accident. Lorenzo stared at his daughter. At this stranger who'd somehow broken through walls that therapists and doctors and endless specialists couldn't crack. Marcus looked between them, his expression troubled. Sir. Everyone out, Lorenzo said. Sir, I really think.
Out. Now.
The security team filed out. Marcus hesitated, then followed, throwing one last suspicious glance at Clara. The nurse wheeled toward the door, but Isabella's hands moved frantically, signing something. She wants me to stay, the nurse translated.
Fine.
Everyone else out. When the door closed, it was just the 4 of them. Lorenzo, Isabella, Clara, and the nurse bearing witness. My daughter, Lorenzo said slowly, seems to think you're important. Clara looked down at the girl holding her hands. I just didn't want her to be scared.
Why?
Because nobody should be that scared. Ever. Something shifted in Lorenzo's eyes. You have no idea what you've walked into. Then maybe you should explain it to me. Lorenzo almost smiled. Almost. You have courage, Miss Martinez. Stupid courage, but courage nonetheless. Is that what this is about? You brought me here to tell me I'm stupid? I brought you here to decide whether you're a threat or an asset. And Lorenzo looked at his daughter. Isabella was still holding Clara's hands, her whole body relaxed in a way he hadn't seen since before the car accident that stole her ability to walk and speak. That, Lorenzo said quietly, depends on what happens next. Lorenzo's studies smelled like leather and old money. Marcus paced in front of the desk like a trapped animal. This is a mistake. You've said that 3 times already. Lorenzo poured himself a whiskey. It was barely noon, but after the scene in the hall, He needed it. Because it's true. That woman is a liability. The photos are everywhere. Every family in Chicago has seen them. They're using it to make you look weak. I am aware. Are you? Because bringing her here, letting Isabella get attached, you're making it worse. Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. The Rossettis are circling. The Koreans are asking questions. Your own men are wondering if you've lost your edge. Lorenzo sipped his drink. My edge.
Yes.
3 years ago, you would have handled this cleanly. Quietly. But now you're bringing random civilians into your home because your daughter held her hand. That's not why I brought her here. Then why? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. Because Isabella hasn't shown interest in another human being since the accident. Not her doctors, not her therapists, not me. She tolerates existence. That's all. He set down his glass. And then some stranger pulls her from the mud, and suddenly she's alive again. That's emotion talking. Not strategy. Maybe. But Isabella is all I have left. Lorenzo's voice went cold. My wife is dead. My brothers are dead. My parents are dead. Everyone I've ever cared about has been taken from me by this life. Everyone except her. So yes, Marcus, if that woman can reach my daughter when no one else can, I will protect her. Strategically sound or not. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. The Rossettis will use her. They'll see the bond and exploit it. Then we make sure they can't get to her.
How?
She lives in a building with broken locks and 100 witnesses. She works at a public diner. She's completely exposed. So, we bring her closer. Closer? Lorenzo. We offer her a position. Caregiver for Isabella. She lives here, under our protection, and Isabella gets someone who actually gives a damn about her well-being. Marcus stared at him. You want to hire a complete stranger to care for your daughter? A woman we know nothing about. We know everything about her. You ran the background check yourself. A background check doesn't tell us her true intentions. Her intentions were to save a drowning child. Lorenzo stood up, moving to the window that overlooked the estate's gardens. I've spent 20 years reading people, Marcus. Knowing when they're lying, when they're scheming, when they're playing an angle. That woman in the hall? She was terrified. Angry. Confused. But she wasn't calculating. She didn't see dollar signs when she looked at Isabella. She saw a child. That doesn't make her trustworthy.
No.
But it makes her worth the risk. Marcus was silent for a moment. The men won't like this. The men don't have to like it. They have to obey. And if she says no... Lorenzo watched the gardens below. Then we make sure she's protected anyway. Because regardless of whether she works for us, the moment those photos went public, she became a target. In the gardens, Clara was discovering what it felt like to breathe for the first time in years. The nurse, Mrs. Alvarez, had suggested fresh air. Isabella loves the gardens, she'd said. Maybe you could walk with her? Clara had expected awkwardness. Expected to feel out of place among the roses and stone paths that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Instead, she felt peaceful. Isabella's wheelchair rolled smoothly on the paved paths. The girl kept looking up at Clara, her face holding an expression somewhere between wonder and relief. So, Clara said, unsure how to talk to someone who couldn't talk back. This is nice. Way nicer than my neighborhood. We've got one park with broken swings and drug dealers. You've got, she gestured around. This. Isabella's hands moved. Signing something. I don't know sign language, Clara admitted.
So
Isabella paused, then pointed at a rose bush. Then at Clara. Then at herself. The rose bush is like us.
Clara guessed.
Isabella shook her head. She pointed at the roses, then made a gesture, like she was picking one. Then she mimed getting hurt.
Oh.
Pretty, but dangerous? Isabella nodded enthusiastically. Clara laughed.
Yeah.
That tracks. Especially for this place. She knelt beside the wheelchair. Can I ask you something? Why did you reach for me? Back in the hall. Isabella's hands moved slowly, deliberately. She pointed at her chest, at her heart. Then she pointed at Clara's chest. Then she brought her hands together, interlocking her fingers. Connected? Clara whispered. You felt connected to me? Isabella nodded. Clara felt her throat tighten. When was the last time anyone had wanted to be connected to her? Not out of obligation or necessity, but just because. I felt it too, Clara said quietly. When I saw you in that mud, I didn't think. I just knew I had to help you. Isabella's smile was like sunrise. They walked, Clara walking, Isabella rolling, through the gardens for an hour. No words, just gestures and glances and a strange, instant understanding that neither of them could explain. Clara showed Isabella how to make a whistle with a blade of grass. Isabella showed Clara where the fish pond was, pointing excitedly at the koi swimming beneath the surface. It was simple, easy, natural. Like they'd known each other for years instead of hours. From his study window, Lorenzo watched them. She's good with her. Mrs. Alvarez had appeared beside him, following his gaze. I've been Isabella's nurse for 2 years. I've never seen her like this. Like what? Happy. The word hit Lorenzo harder than it should have.
Happy.
When was the last time his daughter had been happy? Before the accident? Before her mother died? Before his life had stolen her childhood? The girl needs this, Mrs. Alvarez continued. She needs someone who doesn't treat her like she's broken. Who doesn't hover and worry and talk in that careful voice we all use. She glanced at Lorenzo. That woman down there? She talks to Isabella like she's a person, not a tragedy. Lorenzo said nothing. Whatever you decide to do, Mrs. Alvarez said quietly, think about what Isabella needs. Not what's safe. Not what's strategic. What she needs. Then she left him alone with his thoughts. In the gardens, Clara was laughing at something. Isabella was signing rapidly, her whole body animated in a way Lorenzo had forgotten was possible. His phone buzzed. Marcus, Rossetti's people spotted outside the diner. They're looking for her. Lorenzo typed back. Increase security on her building. Put someone on the sister. And the woman. Lorenzo watched Clara push Isabella's wheelchair toward the fish pond, watched his daughter's joy, and made a decision that he knew Marcus would hate. She's not leaving. Sir. Prepare a room in the East Wing. Clara Martinez is staying. That's an order. He could practically feel Marcus's frustration through the phone. But orders were orders. Lorenzo turned from the window and called down to the gardens. Mrs. Alvarez. Bring them inside. We need to talk. In the gardens, Clara felt her brief moment of peace evaporate. She looked up at the mansion, at the window where she knew he was watching. Guess playtime's over, she said to Isabella. Isabella's hands moved. Don't go. Clara didn't understand the signs, but she understood the fear in the girl's eyes. Hey, she said gently. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. It was a promise she had no right to make. But looking into Isabella's eyes, Clara knew she'd fight to keep it. Even if it killed her. Mia stood at the apartment window watching the street below. The black sedan was gone. But it had been replaced by something worse, uncertainty. Where was Clara? She'd been gone for 6 hours.
No call.
No text. Just silence. Mia's phone buzzed. She grabbed it, hoping, but it was just her friend Ashley. You coming to school? Mia typed back, not today. She couldn't leave. Not until she knew Clara was okay. A knock at the door made her jump. She crept toward it, peering through the peephole. Mrs. Chen. Mia opened the door a crack. Hi, Mrs. Chen. Where's your sister?
She's out.
Out where? With those men in the black car? Mrs. Chen pushed past her into the apartment. Everyone's talking. They think your sister is working for the gangs. Is she dealing? Is that where the money comes from? We're not dealing anything. Then explain the cars. Explain the men asking questions. Mrs. Chen crossed her arms. My grandson saw 3 different cars this morning. Different cars. All watching this building. That's not normal, Mia. I don't know what to tell you. Clara helped someone and suddenly. Helped who? Who did she help that brings this kind of attention? Mia didn't have an answer. Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. Look, I'm not trying to be cruel. But I have family here. My grandson, my daughter. If your sister brought danger to this building, we need to know. She didn't bring anything. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's what they all say. Mrs. Chen headed for the door. Tell your sister to be careful. People are watching. And not just the men in the cars. When she left, Mia sank onto the couch, Clara's letter clutched in her hand. The one she'd found in the pillowcase. If you're reading this, something happened. Call Rosie. Go to Aunt Linda's. Don't try to find me. Please be okay, Mia whispered to the empty apartment. Please. At Rosie's diner, chaos was brewing. Where's Clara? A regular customer asked. She's never missed a shift. Rosie wiped down the counter, her jaw tight. She called in sick. But Clara hadn't called. Hadn't texted. Had just vanished. Rosie tried her number again. Straight to voicemail. The lunch rush was brutal without Clara. Only 2 servers on the floor, orders backing up, customers getting cranky. But Rosie's mind wasn't on the diner. It was on the men who'd come in that morning. Different men than yesterday. These wore leather jackets instead of suits. Had neck tattoos instead of expensive watches. You know a Clara Martinez? The one with a scar had asked. She work here? Rosie had countered. You tell me. Never heard of her. The man had smiled, cold, predatory. That's funny. Because we heard she works here every day. Lunch shift. Real reliable girl. He leaned over the counter. But she didn't show up today. You know where she is?
No idea.
See, that's interesting. Because she didn't show up at home either. Her little sister's all alone, wondering where big sister went. His smile widened. Makes you think something bad might have happened. Rosie had grabbed her baseball bat from under the counter. Get out of my diner. We're just asking questions. And I'm just telling you to leave.
Now.
They'd left. But Rosie knew they'd be back. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 5 years. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. Rosie? That you? I need a favor, Tommy. You never call unless you need something. What is it? One of my girls is in trouble. Missing. And there are people looking for her. Bad people. What kind of bad people? The kind with expensive suits. And the kind with neck tattoos. Both. Tommy was quiet for a moment. Jesus, Rosie. What did your girl do? I don't know. But I need you to ask around. See what the streets are saying. This is gonna cost you. I know. I'll make some calls. Rosie hung up and stared at the diner's front door, waiting for Clara to walk through, praying she would. 3 blocks away, Vincent Rossetti's nephew Tony sat in an unmarked van with 2 of his men. She's not at the diner, one reported. Hasn't shown up all day. What about the apartment? Just the sister. Looks scared out of her mind. Tony drummed his fingers on the dashboard. Vitaly took her. We don't know that. Where else would she be? Those photos went viral in our world. He had to make a move. Tony smiled. Which means she's valuable. More valuable than we thought. So what do? We watch. We wait. And when she surfaces, because she will surface, we grab her. Tony pulled out his phone, scrolling through the photos again. Uncle Vincent wants to know why Vitaly cares about this woman. We're going to find out. And if Vitaly's protecting her, then we send a message. Show him that protection doesn't mean shit when we want something. Back at the apartment, Mia's phone finally rang. Unknown number. But she answered anyway. Hello?
Mia?
Clara. Relief flooded through her. Oh my God. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm fine. I can't tell you where I am, but I'm safe. Safe? There are men watching our building. Mrs. Chin thinks you're a drug dealer. Rosie called looking for you. I know it's bad. But listen. No, you listen. You left a goodbye letter in your pillowcase. I thought you were dead. Clara's voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. But things are complicated. Complicated how? The people I helped. The ones from last night.
They want to talk to me about something.
It might take a few days. A few days? Clara, we can't afford. I know. But this might actually help us. I can't explain right now, but trust me. Okay. Mia wanted to scream. Wanted to cry. Wanted to reach through the phone and shake her sister. Are you in danger?
No.
I promise.
I'm
safer than I've been in a long time. That doesn't make any sense. I know. But I need you to do something for me. Pack a bag. Important stuff only. And be ready to leave if I call. Leave? Leave where? Anywhere that's not there.
just.
Be ready. Please. The line went quiet for a moment. Clara, you're scaring me.
I'm sorry.
But I'm trying to protect you. There are things happening that I don't fully understand yet. But I promise, I'm going to fix this.
How?
I don't know yet. But I will. I love you, Mia. I love you too. Please come home soon. I will. I promise. The line went dead. Mia sat in the empty apartment, surrounded by overdue bills and broken promises, and started packing a bag. Outside, 3 different cars watched the building. One belonged to Lorenzo's men, assigned to protect the sister. One belonged to the Rossettis, waiting for an opening. And one belonged to someone else entirely, someone who'd been watching the story unfold and saw an opportunity. The powder keg was building. All it needed was a spark. Night fell over the Vitali estate like a heavy curtain. Lorenzo sat alone in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. The room was dark except for the lamp casting long shadows across the walls. He'd sent Clara to a guest room in the East Wing, given her clean clothes, food, privacy. Mrs. Alvarez was watching over her, making sure she didn't try to run. Not that she could. The estate was surrounded by guards. Cameras everywhere. No one got in or out without Lorenzo knowing. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was what to do with her now. Lorenzo pulled up his phone, scrolling through encrypted messages. Marcus had compiled a threat assessment. It wasn't pretty. Rossetti's confirmed watching her building. Koreans asking questions through channels. Russians waiting to see our move. Every family in Chicago is watching to see how we handle this. Recommendation: eliminate the liability.
Clean.
Quiet. Make it look like an accident. Message sent. We protect our image above all else. Lorenzo stared at those words. Eliminate the liability. 3 years ago, he wouldn't have hesitated. Someone became a problem, you solved it.
Permanently.
That's how you survived in this world. But 3 years ago, his wife had been alive. Isabella had been walking, talking, laughing. 3 years ago, he'd still believed in clean solutions. He closed his eyes and saw the accident again. His wife's car crushed. Isabella trapped in the back seat, her spine shattered. The doctors saying she'd never walk again. Never speak again. The way Isabella had retreated into herself afterward, like a flower closing up.
Silent. Distant.
Present but not really there. And then today. Lorenzo opened his eyes and looked toward the East Wing. Today, Isabella had laughed. He'd heard it from the gardens while talking to Marcus. A real laugh, bright and genuine. The sound had stopped him mid-sentence. He'd gone to the window and watched Clara pushing Isabella's wheelchair along the path, both of them bent over something, a ladybug on a leaf. Clara had been making exaggerated faces, and Isabella was laughing silently, her shoulders shaking with joy. When was the last time he'd seen that? 2 years? 3. Lorenzo stood and walked to his window. The gardens were dark now, but he could still picture them there. The ease between them. The way Isabella had looked at Clara, like she was the sun. What would Maria say? He thought, picturing his dead wife. What would she tell me to do? He knew the answer. Maria would tell him to choose Isabella's happiness over his empire. Every time. But Maria had never understood that the empire was what kept Isabella safe. The power, the fear, the reputation. That's what protected her from enemies who'd use her to get to him. And Clara threatened all of that. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Sir, we need a decision. The longer she stays, the more complicated this gets. Lorenzo didn't respond. Instead, he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a photo. Maria, holding baby Isabella. Both of them smiling at the camera. A lifetime ago. What do I do? He whispered to the picture. How do I choose between keeping her safe and keeping her alive? Because that's what Clara represented. Not just safety, life. The spark that had been missing from Isabella's eyes for 3 years. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts.
Come in.
Mrs. Alvarez entered, her expression troubled. She's asking for you. Clara? Isabella. She won't settle down. Keeps signing Clara's name. She wants to know if Clara is staying. Lorenzo rubbed his face. What did you tell her? That I don't know. Because I don't. Mrs. Alvarez met his eyes. Are you really going to send that girl away? After what I saw in the gardens today? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Your daughter is happy for the first time in years. You want to take that away from her. I want to keep her safe. Safe isn't the same as alive, Lorenzo. Mrs. Alvarez's voice was gentle but firm. Isabella has been surviving, not living. You know the difference. Lorenzo said nothing. That girl down the hall. She doesn't care about your money. Doesn't care about your power. She looked at Isabella and saw a child who needed help. Nothing more, nothing less. Mrs. Alvarez moved toward the door. You have until morning to decide. But know this, whatever you choose, Isabella will remember. And so will you. She left him alone with his ghosts. 3 miles away, in the back room of a Korean barbecue restaurant, Vincent Rossetti met with 2 of his best men. She's still at the estate, Tony reported. Our guy on the inside confirmed it. East wing, 3rd floor. Interesting. Vincent studied the building blueprints spread across the table. Vitali's keeping her close. That means she matters. So we grab her? Not yet. She's too protected there. Vincent tapped the blueprints. But according to our source, Isabella has therapy appointments. Twice a week. Downtown clinic. They have to leave the estate for that. Tony grinned. A moving target. Exactly. Next session is Thursday morning. Convoy will be smaller. Can't draw too much attention in daylight downtown. That's when we make our move. And do what with her? Vincent was quiet for a moment. We see what makes her so special to Vitali. See if we can use her to negotiate. And if she's not useful, he shrugged. Then she's a message. Show Vitali that keeping civilians close makes him vulnerable. What if Vitali fights back?
He will.
But that's the point. We make him choose between protecting his image and protecting her. Either way, we win. Tony pulled out his phone, showing the mud photos again. I still don't get it. She's nobody. Why risk a war over her? Because she's not nobody to Isabella. Vincent stood, rolling up the blueprints. And Isabella is everything to Lorenzo. So yes, Tony, we're going to risk a war. Because the man who's controlled Chicago for 20 years just showed his weakness. A disabled girl and a poor waitress. Exactly. And we're going to exploit both. Back at the estate, Clara couldn't sleep. The room they'd given her was bigger than her entire apartment. The bed was softer than anything she'd ever felt. But she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. What was she doing here? What was happening to Mia? What had she gotten herself into? A soft knock made her sit up.
Come in.
The door opened. Isabella rolled in, wearing pajamas, Mrs. Alvarez pushing her wheelchair. She insisted, Mrs. Alvarez said apologetically. Wouldn't sleep until she saw you. Isabella's hands moved frantically. She wants to know if you're leaving, Mrs. Alvarez translated. Clara looked at the girl's frightened eyes. I don't know.
More signing.
She says please don't go.
She says.
She says you make her feel safe. Clara's throat tightened. You make me feel safe too. Isabella smiled. That sunrise smile that made everything else fade away. Can I ask you something? Clara said to Mrs. Alvarez. What happens to people who get close to this family? Mrs. Alvarez's expression darkened. Nothing good. Lorenzo's wife died in a car accident that may not have been an accident. His brothers were killed by rival families. Everyone he loves becomes a target. So, if I stay, you become a target too. And so does your sister. Clara looked at Isabella, at that hopeful, innocent face. She'd never had a real choice. She'd stopped having choices the moment she jumped into that mud. Tell him I'll stay, Clara said quietly. But only if my sister is protected too. I'll let him know. After they left, Clara lay back down, knowing she'd just sealed her fate. Somewhere in the darkness, Lorenzo made his decision too. The collision course was set. Thursday morning came too fast. Clara had spent 3 days at the estate, learning the rhythms of Isabella's life. Breakfast at 8, morning exercises with a physical therapist at 9, lunch at noon, afternoons in the garden or reading, Clara reading aloud while Isabella signed responses that Mrs. Alvarez translated. It was peaceful, almost normal. Almost enough to make Clara forget she was living in a gilded cage. Isabella has therapy today, Mrs. Alvarez announced at breakfast.
Downtown.
Physical and speech therapy combined session. Lorenzo looked up from his newspaper. The usual detail? Yes, sir. 2 guards, myself, and the driver. I want to go, Clara said. Everyone turned to stare at her. Clara cleared her throat. If that's okay. Isabella seems calmer when I'm around. Right. Isabella nodded enthusiastically, signing something. She wants Clara to come, Mrs. Alvarez translated. Lorenzo studied Clara for a long moment. It's not a field trip. Downtown can be dangerous. More dangerous than the South Side? I've lived there my whole life. Different kind of dangerous. I can handle it. Something flickered in Lorenzo's eyes. Respect, maybe. Or concern.
Fine.
But you follow the guard's instructions. No exceptions. Deal. The van left at 10 a.m. sharp. It was unmarked, deliberately ordinary looking. 2 guards sat in the front, both armed but dressed casually. Mrs. Alvarez sat in the back with Isabella and Clara, helping secure Isabella's wheelchair. 40-minute drive, the driver said. Clinics in the medical district. Clara looked out the tinted windows as they pulled away from the estate. The world outside felt surreal after 3 days in Lorenzo's bubble. Real buildings, real people, real life. She'd called Mia twice. Quick calls, careful words. Lorenzo had arranged for protection on the apartment, guards disguised as maintenance workers. Mia was safe. But Clara could hear the fear in her sister's voice. When are you coming home? Soon, Clara had promised, not knowing if it was true. Isabella's hand found Clara's, squeezing gently. Clara squeezed back, offering a smile. You're good with her, Mrs. Alvarez said quietly. She makes it easy. Most people don't think so. They see the wheelchair, the silence, and they treat her like she's broken. Like she's not really there. That's their loss. Mrs. Alvarez smiled. Lorenzo made the right choice keeping you.
Clara wasn't sure about that. But she was here now.
Might as well make the best of it. They'd been driving for 20 minutes when the driver spoke up. Taking the usual route. Thompson Street to Madison, then. Detour ahead, the second guard interrupted, pointing. Construction signs. Clara's stomach dropped. Wait. It's fine, the driver said. Happens all the time. We'll go around. But as they turned onto the detour, a narrow alley between commercial buildings, Clara saw the barricade. 3 cars, blocking the exit. Back up, the second guard shouted. Back up now. The driver threw it in reverse. Too late. 2 more cars pulled in behind them, sealing them in. Oh God, Mrs. Alvarez whispered. Oh God, we're trapped. Men emerged from the cars. 8 of them.
armed,
moving with purpose. The guards pulled their guns. "Stay down. Everyone stay down." But Clara could see it in their faces, the same panic from the mud site, the same frozen fear. They were going to hesitate, going to debate, going to let Isabella get taken while they calculated odds. "Not again." "Drive," Clara said. "We can't, we're blocked." "Through them. Drive through them." "Are you insane?" "We'll hit." Clara didn't wait. She lunged forward, shoving the driver aside, and grabbed the wheel. "What the hell are you?" She slammed her foot on top of his, crushing the gas pedal. The van lurched forward with a roar. "Jesus Christ!" The guard in the passenger seat grabbed the dashboard. The men in front of the barricade dove aside. The van hit the first car, a sedan, with a sickening crunch of metal. The windshield spiderwebbed. The van kept going. "Clara!" Mrs. Alvarez screamed. Clara gritted her teeth and held the wheel steady, her heart hammering. The van scraped past the sedan, tires screaming, side mirrors shattering. Gunfire erupted behind them. The rear window exploded. "Stay down," Clara shouted, not letting go of the wheel. "Keep your heads down." The driver had recovered enough to take back control, his foot still on the gas. They burst out of the alley onto the main street, narrowly missing a city bus. "Go, go, go," the second guard yelled, twisting to look behind them. "They're following." 2 cars peeled out of the alley in pursuit. Clara scrambled back to Isabella, throwing herself over the wheelchair to shield her. Mrs. Alvarez was pressed against the wall, her face white with terror. Isabella was signing frantically, scared, panicked gestures. "You're okay," Clara gasped, her hands shaking. "I've got you. You're okay." The driver was weaving through traffic, running red lights, the pursuing cars staying close. The second guard had his phone out, shouting into it. "Code red. Downtown Medical District. We're under attack." "How far to the estate?" Clara demanded. 20 minutes. Too long. Way too long. "The police station," Mrs. Alvarez said suddenly. "On 5th Street. 3 blocks from here." "They won't follow us into a police station," the driver realized. He cranked the wheel hard, taking a corner so fast the van tilted on 2 wheels. Isabella's wheelchair slid. Clara grabbed it, using her body to keep it stable. The police station appeared ahead, a fortress of concrete and glass. The driver didn't slow down, just aimed straight for the front entrance where patrol cars were parked. The pursuing cars peeled off, disappearing into side streets. The van screeched to a stop in front of the station. Cops immediately swarmed them, guns drawn. "Federal case. Federal case," the guard shouted, holding up his phone. "Call this number."
Now.
Chaos erupted. Questions, demands, confusion. But Clara wasn't paying attention to any of it. She was focused on Isabella, whose hands were shaking, whose eyes were filled with tears. "Hey," Clara whispered, pulling her close. "We're safe now. You're safe. I promise." Isabella clung to her, silent sobs racking her small body. The second guard was on the phone with someone, Lorenzo, probably, explaining what happened. Clara caught fragments. Ambush. Blocked in. She drove through. Saved them. Mrs. Alvarez sat against the van wall, crying softly. They tried to take her. They were going to take Isabella. But they didn't, Clara said firmly. They didn't get her. She's right here. 30 minutes later, Lorenzo's personal convoy arrived. He emerged from the lead vehicle like a storm, all controlled fury and deadly calm. His eyes found Clara first, still holding his daughter, and something unreadable crossed his face. Then he turned to his guards. "Get them home," he said quietly. "And someone tell me exactly how my daughter ended up in an ambush 3 blocks from her therapy clinic." The guards looked at each other, then at their feet. "It was Clara," Mrs. Alvarez said, her voice still shaking. The guards froze. Just like at the mud. They were going to let those men take Isabella while they figured out what to do. But Clara, she wiped her eyes. Clara grabbed the wheel and drove us through the blockade. She saved Isabella. Again, Lorenzo's eyes returned to Clara. She expected anger, expected blame. Instead, she saw something that looked almost like wonder. "We'll talk when we get home," was all he said. As they loaded into the vehicles, a fortress of SUVs this time, Clara finally let herself shake. Let the adrenaline crash hit her. She'd just rammed a car with a van full of people, had been shot at, had put herself between Isabella and armed men. She'd done it without thinking.
Just like the mud.
Isabella's hand found hers again, squeezing tight. And despite everything, the terror, the danger, the absolute insanity of her life right now, Clara squeezed back. Some things she was learning were worth fighting for, even if the fight might kill you. The estate's main hall was silent as a tomb. Lorenzo stood at the center, surrounded by his men. 20 of them, including the guards who'd been in the van, all standing at attention, avoiding his eyes. Clara sat on a bench near the wall, Isabella's wheelchair beside her. Mrs. Alvarez had wanted to take the girl upstairs, but Isabella had refused, clinging to Clara's hand. "Explain," Lorenzo said quietly. The 2 guards from the van stepped forward. The driver spoke first, his voice shaking. "Sir, we followed protocol. Took the usual route. When we hit the construction detour—" "There was no construction," Marcus interrupted, striding into the hall. He threw a tablet onto the table. "I just checked with the city. No permits issued for Thompson Street. No construction scheduled." The room went colder. "It was a setup," Marcus continued. "Someone on the inside told them the route, told them the timing." Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but the air pressure in the room seemed to drop. "Search the detail. Everyone who knew about today's appointment. I want names." "Already done, sir." Marcus gestured, and 2 men dragged someone into the hall. A young man, maybe 25, bleeding from his nose. One of the estate's junior guards. "Found him trying to leave through the service entrance," Marcus said. "Had 10,000 in cash in his jacket." Lorenzo walked over to the young man. Didn't touch him. Just looked at him. "Who paid you?" "I don't."
Who paid?
"You." The young guard's resolve crumbled. "Rossetti. Tony Rossetti. He said it would be easy money. Just tell them the route and timing. Nobody was supposed to get hurt." "Nobody was supposed to get hurt," Lorenzo repeated softly. "My daughter was supposed to be kidnapped, but nobody was supposed to get hurt. Is that right?" "They said they just wanted to talk to her." "To the woman. They said." "Take him to the basement," Lorenzo said. "Marcus will handle him." The guard was dragged away, screaming apologies. Lorenzo turned to face his men. This happened because of cowardice. Not his betrayal. That's just greed. But because when my daughter was in danger, my trained guards froze, his voice was ice. Again, the men shifted uncomfortably. "At the mud site, you stood there calculating risk while a civilian jumped in to save her. Today, you were about to let armed men take her while you debated tactics." Lorenzo's eyes swept the room. "Do you know who saved my daughter today?" Silence. "Clara Martinez. A waitress from the South Side. Someone with no training, no weapons, no backup. She grabbed the wheel and drove through a barricade while bullets were flying." He paused. "While my guards sat there frozen." One of the guards spoke up. "Sir, with all respect, we were assessing." "You were afraid." Lorenzo cut him off. "That's fine. Fear keeps you alive. But when you let fear stop you from protecting what matters, you're useless to me." Marcus stepped forward. "Lorenzo, we need to discuss the real issue here. This woman, Clara, she's the reason all this happened. The Rossettis saw the photos, saw the bond with Isabella, and decided she was an exploitable weakness. Every decision we've made since that mud incident has been damage control." He pointed at Clara. "She's the liability." Clara felt everyone's eyes turn to her. She wanted to shrink, to disappear. But Isabella's hand squeezed hers, anchoring her. "You're right," Lorenzo said, and Clara's heart sank. She is the reason this happened. Marcus nodded, vindicated. So we need to. She's the reason my daughter is still alive, Lorenzo continued, his voice cutting through Marcus's words. Twice now. While the men I pay to protect her stood around calculating odds, she acted.
No hesitation.
No fear. Just pure instinct to protect a child. That's recklessness, not courage. Is it? Lorenzo's eyes were cold. Tell me, Marcus. When was the last time you jumped into danger without calculating your survival odds? When was the last time any of you put someone else's life before your own safety? The room was silent. That's what I thought. Lorenzo turned back to his men. The guards from today's detail are reassigned. Desk work. Permanently. You failed my daughter when it mattered. Sir, one of them protested. I don't accept excuses. I accept results. Lorenzo's voice was final. Now get out of my sight. All of you except Marcus. The men filed out, shoulders slumped. When they were gone, Lorenzo faced his consigliera. You've been against Clara from the beginning, Lorenzo said, calling her a liability, a plant, a security risk. You wanted her eliminated because she is a risk.
No.
My men are the risk. Their cowardice. Their inability to act when it matters. Lorenzo moved closer. You know what I learned today, Marcus? That courage is rare. And when you find it, you don't destroy it. You protect it. This is emotion talking. You're making decisions based on your daughter's attachment. I'm making decisions based on results. Lorenzo's voice rose for the first time. Clara has saved Isabella twice while trained professionals froze. That's not emotion. That's fact. Marcus's jaw tightened. And when the Rossettis come again, when they realize she's permanently in Isabella's life, you're painting a target on her back. Then we make sure she's protected. Around the clock. Whatever it takes. Lorenzo, this is insane. Is it? Or is it insane that I've surrounded my daughter with people who are more concerned with protocols than her life? Lorenzo's eyes were hard. You've been my friend for 20 years, Marcus. But you're wrong about this. You're wrong about her. Marcus stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I. Marcus left, leaving Lorenzo alone with Clara, Isabella, and Mrs. Alvarez. Lorenzo walked over to them. Isabella looked up at him, her eyes wide, then signed something rapidly. She says Clara is brave, Mrs. Alvarez translated softly. She says Clara is her hero. Lorenzo knelt beside his daughter's wheelchair. She's mine too. Clara felt tears sting her eyes. I just did what anyone would. No, Lorenzo interrupted. You did what no one else did. Including me. He looked at her directly. I've been trying to protect Isabella by building walls around her, hiring the toughest men, creating the strongest fortress. But I realize now that's not protection. That's prison. Sir. From now on, you stay close to Isabella. Not as a guest. Not as a temporary solution. Lorenzo's voice was firm. You're her caregiver. Her protector. Whatever you need, your sister protected, money for bills, education for Mia, it's done. No questions asked. Clara couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. But you need to understand what this means, Lorenzo continued. The moment you accept you're part of this family, and that makes you a target. Not just from rivals, but from everyone who wants to hurt me. I know, Clara whispered.
Do you?
Because there's no going back from this. Your old life, it's gone. Your sister will be relocated somewhere safe. You'll live here. You'll be watched. Protected. But also trapped. Isabella's hand tightened in Clara's. Clara looked at this little girl who'd somehow become the most important person in her world. This child who'd reached for her when no one else did. Who'd trusted her when she had every reason not to. I'm already trapped, Clara said quietly. The moment I pulled her from that mud, my old life ended. So yes, I accept. Lorenzo nodded slowly. Then welcome to the family, Clara Martinez. God help us all. 2 weeks later, Clara stood in front of a mirror in her new room at the estate. The woman staring back was the same face, same scars on her hands from the mud, but everything else had changed. She wore simple clothes, nothing fancy. Lorenzo had insisted she didn't need to dress like his staff. "You're not an employee," he'd said. "You're family. Family." The words still felt foreign on her tongue. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in." Mia burst through, dropping her backpack and launching herself at Clara. "Oh my God, this place is insane. There's a library bigger than our old apartment. And the kitchen, Clara, they have 3 refrigerators. 3-inch. Clara laughed, hugging her sister tight. "How was the first day at the new school?"
Weird. Good weird, though.
"The teachers actually care. The books aren't falling apart. And nobody's dealing drugs in the bathroom." Mia pulled back, studying Clara's face. "You look different." "Different how?" "Less tired. Like you're actually sleeping for once." Clara smiled. "I am. 8 hours a night. It's revolutionary." The truth was more complicated. Yes, she slept better. Had regular meals. Didn't worry about rent or bills. But she'd traded one kind of exhaustion for another, constantly being on guard, aware that danger could come from anywhere. Lorenzo had been true to his word. Within days of Clara accepting her new role, things had shifted. He'd called a meeting of his organization, his entire network, and made an announcement that rippled through Chicago's underworld. "Clara Martinez is under my protection. She is Isabella's caregiver and part of my family. Anyone who touches her answers to me." The message was clear. She was untouchable. Marcus had arranged for Mia's transfer to a prestigious prep school on the north side. Full scholarship, anonymous donor. Mia didn't need to know the money came from a crime boss. She just needed to know she was finally getting the education she deserved. "Isabella wanted me to give you this," Mia said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. She drew it in art therapy. Clara unfolded it carefully. A crayon drawing. 2 figures standing in a garden. One tall, one in a wheelchair. Both smiling. Above them, Isabella had written in careful letters, "My hero." Clara's throat tightened. "I'll put this on my wall. She really loves you, you know. It's kind of amazing to watch." The feeling's mutual. Mia sat on Clara's bed, a massive 4-poster that could probably sleep 6 people. "So this is really happening? You're staying here?"
Most of the time.
Lorenzo said I can visit our old neighborhood when I want. With guards, obviously. "And you're okay with this? Living in a mansion with the mob?"
Clara thought about that.
A month ago, I would have said no way.
But now.
She looked at Mia's healthy color, the light in her eyes that came from not worrying about where her next meal would come from. "Now I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." 3 days later, word reached Lorenzo that the Rossettis had withdrawn their men from the south side. Vincent Rossetti had sent a message through channels, no further action against the Martinez woman or the Vitali family at this time. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a truce. Just a strategic retreat. Tony Rossetti, apparently, had been disciplined for the botched kidnapping attempt. The young guard who'd betrayed Lorenzo had been found in the river. A message to anyone else thinking about selling information. The Korean and Russian families had backed off too, content to watch and wait. Clara had become radioactive, too risky to touch, too protected to exploit. In the underground networks, whispers spread. The mud rescuer is family now. Vitali claimed her. Some said it was a sign of weakness, Lorenzo getting soft over a civilian. Others said it was brilliant, showing his organization that loyalty was rewarded, that courage mattered more than pedigree.
Clara didn't care what they said.
She only cared about the little girl who signed her name every morning with a smile. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Lorenzo stood at his study window, watching the estate's lake shimmer in the sunlight. Below, Clara pushed Isabella's wheelchair through the grass. They'd moved off the paved paths, something Mrs. Alvarez would scold them for later, and were heading toward the water's edge. Isabella was signing enthusiastically, probably telling some story. Clara was laughing, responding with exaggerated gestures that made Isabella's shoulders shake with silent laughter. It looked so normal, so peaceful. Lorenzo knew it was an illusion. Danger still lurked. The Rossettis would try again eventually. Other rivals would probe for weaknesses. His world didn't allow for happy endings. But watching them now, this brave woman and his precious daughter, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years.
Hope.
Marcus appeared beside him, following his gaze. She's good for Isabella. Yes. The men are starting to accept her. They see how Isabella has changed. Good. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I was wrong about her. Lorenzo glanced at his old friend. I know. You realize what you've done, don't you? By making her family, you've shifted the entire power dynamic. Our rivals will adjust their strategies. Some might see it as an opportunity. Let them try. Lorenzo's voice was calm, certain. Clara drove through a barricade to save my daughter. She jumped into mud when train guards froze. She's earned her place here. Earned by courage, not blood. Sometimes courage matters more than blood. By the lake, Clara had stopped the wheelchair. She was pointing at something in the water, probably the koi swimming near the surface. Isabella was leaning forward, delighted. The mud was long gone from Clara's hands. The cuts had healed to faint scars. But the moment that started it all, that desperate rescue in the rain-soaked construction zone, had permanently altered the trajectory of all their lives. Lorenzo had spent 20 years building an empire on fear and power. One woman had reminded him that sometimes the strongest protection wasn't walls or weapons. It was love. Sir? Marcus said quietly. What are you thinking? Lorenzo watched Clara lift Isabella from the wheelchair, carefully settling her on the grass so she could feel the lake breeze. Watched his daughter's face light up with pure joy. I'm thinking, Lorenzo said slowly, that some rescues go both ways. Clara had saved Isabella from the mud. But maybe, just maybe, Isabella had saved Clara from drowning in a different kind of mud. The kind that suffocated hope and crushed dreams and made you forget that kindness still existed in the world. And in saving each other, they'd saved something in Lorenzo too. Something he thought died with his wife.
His humanity.
Marcus cleared his throat. I'll leave you to it, sir. When he was gone, Lorenzo remained at the window, watching over his daughter and the brave woman who'd become her guardian. The mud was washed away, but its impact would ripple through their lives forever. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage changed everything. Sometimes heroes didn't wear suits or carry guns. Sometimes they just kicked off their shoes and jumped.